I'm going to share my screen before we get started. So you have some more people joining us. Excellent. And I get rid of this. And what do we have? I'm running 3 screens, sometimes get lost, and I just need to always see what you guys see. So that's why I'm looking down over here. Welcome to the Here to There show. This is the first web event that I'm having in 2021. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm quite excited about starting the year again and get going. And today my guest speaker is, I'm going to choke on your last name. I always choke on
Okay.
Gabriella, and I'm just going to have you.
Wilson.
Wilson. Okay, it's the middle name. I wasn't sure. Gabriella
Oh,
Wilson.
Mervis Wilson. Thank you.
Yeah. So Gabriella is my guest speaker on Friday. She's going to be she's for the Widen Your Gaze show. We're going to talk about that in a bit. But we're just going to do what we normally do in the show, and that is get to know each other. I'm going to get to know Gabriella, and you guys are going to have an opportunity to ask some questions about what she's going to be doing here. So I can stop sharing there, and I need to put it on speaker view on that. So, Gabriella, we have known each other for a couple months now. I can't remember. Was it Shomo that connected us? No,
It was Chris.
It was Chris that connected us. Okay. So thank you very much for that connection, Chris. And where did you and Chris get connected at? Were you at a web event?
Yeah, at a networking event. I was a one-time drop-in, but I think it's a group that Chris is pretty involved in. Am I wrong?
I think, was it Beast?
Yeah, Networking Beast. Yeah, exactly.
I'm embarrassed to, I just haven't had much of a chance to join for a while, unfortunately.
So,
but I want to go
no
back.
Judgment.
Sorry. Right. Very cool. So as we always do on the show, is there's going to be an hour of conversation, and then we're going to show a video at the top of the hour, and then we're going to continue on with the conversation after that. And Gabriella, I'm just going to start by tell the audience your company name and your business, and we'll start with that.
Sure. So I'm the founder of Realignment Coaching. It's spelled a little funky. I'll put it in the chat in a few minutes. And I am a career and life coach. So I offer a fusion of both the career stuff as well as the life coaching. So before I was a coach, my professional background was in human resources. So I have the experience on the other side of the recruitment process. So I help my clients with everything from resume, prepping for interviews, looking at their LinkedIn, things like that. But what I have found is I can give my clients as many tools as possible, but until they work on the deeper stuff that's going on, it's going to be hard to land that dream job. So I support my clients also in figuring out what the hell they want to do with their lives, or how they want to show up as a professional in their career, or identifying what are those limiting beliefs that's kind of playing around in the back of your mind that might be holding you back. And from my general life coach training, I am able to kind of straddle between giving the career advice with the real coaching exploration. And then even further to that, whatever shows up in one area of your life shows up everywhere. So we might be working on some sort of pattern in your professional life, and all of a sudden we're talking about, a goal that you might have around physical health or financial well-being or personal relationships. So it's kind of this catch-all, and it's a pretty unique model, but it's what I've found really creates the most value for my clients. So anybody who really feels stuck, has a goal, has a dream, has a vision, especially if it's the career realm, but not exclusively, then I'm here to support, to make those dreams a reality.
So you said several things here. I took some notes, and I'm just going to ask about some of those, and we're going to go
Yeah.
back to what you said at the beginning with is in your HR track, was there anything in HR that you actually focused on, or was it you were a generalist, or did you have a specific area that you focused on in policies or hiring or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great question. So I was primarily a generalist, and most specifically in HR lingo, a business partner. So I worked most closely in each of my roles, worked most closely with my contingency and, really supporting them in whatever kind of comes up. And I loved being a generalist because it kept every day interesting. All my projects were so different. I was helping with recruitment, and then I was helping with a compensation analysis, and then I was helping, coach a junior employee, and then, whatever it is. I loved that. So I really have had exposure and have touched a little bit of every area of HR. In my last role, I had a big focus though on learning and development. So creating trainings, leading and facilitating trainings, looking at the strategy of, looking at our talent, what are our talent gaps, how can we support them, whether it's through a training or a different initiative. So I did have a focus in that area and totally fell in love. And even within my business today, I work with one-on-one clients like how I outlined, but I also partner with businesses. So bringing in a lot of that experience from training and development.
Right. And was there an aspect of HR that you didn't like?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually really didn't like recruitment, which is so funny because now I'm supporting from kind of the other side. I think I loved meeting people. Interviewing, getting to know people. That's kind of my jam. But whenever I felt like I had to kind of sell my company, anything that felt salesy or forced just felt yucky to me. And just inauthentic. So I really didn't love touching the recruitment aspect.
Right. Okay. So that's not really, you didn't want to have to convince anyone or just, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And when you were doing the recruiting aspect of it, was it more employers? It was employees, if you're out of work, you had a better, because sometimes when there's a lot of work going on, or we're looking for a lot of work, you can't find people, so then it's the employees have all the power, and then when there's not enough work to go around, then the employers have all the power on that. So you felt you were having at times to basically say, hey, come work for us, you should work for us, and that would not, because that's really not what you're trained for, is to do those type of sales, is it?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the majority of recruitment these days is what they call passive recruitment. So people who aren't necessarily applying for a job, but those LinkedIn messages from either an in-house or an external recruiter saying, hey, your profile looks great, I have a role open. The majority of jobs these days are filled through that manner. And that felt yucky, reaching out to somebody and trying to just convince them to get on the phone. Maybe they weren't looking, and some recruiters out there, I mean, they'll reach out to someone when they can see they just started a job 3 months ago,
Right.
They're not looking. So.
Yeah. I for 4 months I was a headhunter, and the training that my employer put me through was a really they taught you how to lie to get in front of the people you need to, and really was that. And so it's like you say these things, and ideally you want to get to that person, get them on the phone, and then you have a script that you go with it, and you trying to attract them. But what we were always trying to look with, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term, but is someone's career wound. And the career wound is, so you get someone on the phone, let's say you're trying to source a mechanical engineer with 10 years of specific focus in this area. So that's what you're looking for. So the company can't find them, so that's why they go to the headhunter. and they don't like it because they're paying for HR and they're also paying for the HR for the headhunter on top of that, right? And it can be pretty expensive to bring in on that. So you're going to want to have the right person. So it was what we always tried to figure out is why this is a career wound. Why would they consider leaving? Why would they consider jumping ship?
Yep.
And if it was, so if an opportunity came your way, would you consider it? Who's going to say no to that? That's some of the language we'd use. And it's like, well, yeah, if the right opportunity came along, I would consider it, because only an idiot would say no.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I'm not going to, I won't look at anything, right? I'm happy in my little cloistered world. And it's not that happens. And then you'd follow up with the question is, well, why would you consider leaving?
Yeah.
And so what we're looking for, this is where the career wound comes in. What we're looking for is, I was passed over for that position. I don't like my new boss, or I don't like my current boss. I'm tired of having to travel. I'm tired of missing my kids. These are the career wounds. But if they ever said I'd move for money, we wouldn't touch them. Because if they're going to do it with us for money, they're going to do it to us for money.
Absolutely.
Right. So money can't be the motivator on that. And is that kind of that resonates with you, that idea of?
Absolutely. I find that really delving into their last experience, or what would be kind of their current present experience, is so telling. Even what you were saying with, I don't really like my boss. I mean, there's a chance that they do have a sucky boss, but also that can give you information about, do they struggle to work with people of different personalities, or, different approaches, different opinions. Like everything that someone is sharing in an interview, even during the small talk, is information for you to really start to envision what would they be like in my company.
Right.
And exactly as you said, if they're willing to leave for X reason, then they'll probably leave me for the same reason.
Right. Absolutely. And when it came to the interviewing, whatnot, did you, how did you feel you did for your track record, for finding those good fits, right? Because what are we going on when we interview people? We're going on what the resume, cover letter says, the references, and I've made some bad hires that seemed to be a good choice, and then they just got through on that. And not of all the times I did hiring, I would say I was 85% satisfaction rate with that, whatever that number is on that, but it certainly wasn't 100%. So did you ever find struggles in the hiring and finding these actual good candidates and whatnot?
Yeah. I can think about one particular job I had where I was responsible for recruitment, and I had a difficult time, primarily because I think the business itself wasn't clear of who they wanted. So I think the more prep that you can do before you even kick off the recruitment process, the better. It's going to help you in the long run. So, we, often see here's what I need for an educational background. Here's how many years experience. Here's about the salary they're looking for, where they're located geographically, the basic kind of logistical tick marks. But I like to spend a lot of time talking to the hiring manager, the head of the department, of, what kind of person do you want on your team? What are the actual skills that they need? What's the personality that you jive with? What kind of, oftentimes in interview, I'll ask, how do you like to be managed? Maybe asking the manager, how do you like to manage? So by having those conversations beforehand, what kind of energy do you like? Things like that, then it's going to be so much easier to match somebody. I think in this one particular job where I struggled, I was actually filling sales associate positions for a soap store. And everything that they kept telling me was they loved actors. They loved their personality. They believed they could sell. And so I just kept hiring kids in acting school, which is easy to find in New York City.
I bet.
And then they kept saying, oh, but they're not reliable because their schedules change all the time, or they call out. And I go, well, of course, because they're trying to get on Broadway and they just got called for an audition. They don't care about selling your soap. So it's really about thinking, okay, well, maybe you like the personality of an actor, but what you want is someone with a more stable schedule, or what you want is someone who is going to prioritize this job over other opportunities, so really thinking about the whole character, then it's so much easier to match.
Yeah, because if you're thinking about an actor, what you're really looking at, what in my mind, what you're really looking for is someone who's animated, someone who's comfortable, someone who is able to have enough confidence, not to worry about approaching people, to have those kind of social skills, that kind of stuff, right? But that's not necessarily all actors. A lot of actors hide behind their persona, and they may not be perfect for that because they're on the stage type of thing. I know that one of the things I often focused when I was hiring, and it's very similar language what you're using, but it is like, what are the true core competencies for the position? Like, really, what are we really talking about? And one of the core competencies I had to hire a lot for was temperament, because I was hiring youth workers to work with kids that were really quite angry. And I need to know that I wasn't going to send in someone who didn't have the ability, I'm going to swear here, to not buy into the fuck you attitude that you're going to get from an adolescent, which I could never do. Of all the years I worked with kids, like I worked 11 and younger, because I was not someone that couldn't disengage from the fuck you attitude. I would actually buy into the power struggle. And and that wasn't helping anyone, right? So I wouldn't have been good for that position. I was better with, like I said, children 11 and younger and whatnot. But those core competencies, I don't think in so many ways businesses really know how to determine what are those really not temperaments, but those personality traits you need for a position, and they haven't really thought about it. There was I was working with a bookkeeper, and she actually had a god awful, like, she would hire people on the spot, not even check the references. That's like, and this woman was extremely savvy when it comes to running businesses. But she was like, yeah, I hire someone and 3 weeks later they're gone, or I fire them and whatnot. And it's just like, well, what's your process? And I was actually shocked. But what two things that she recognizes is that she actually realized she needed out of the box thinkers, and all she was hiring is in the box thinkers. And so she needs someone more of an accounting mindset than somebody in actual bookkeeper mindset, who are kind of black and white in how they see the world. Because bookkeeping is 2 and 2 equals 4 all the time. Sometimes with accountants, 2 and 2 equals 7, because they need to do that. So yeah, temperament was something that was really, or not temperament, sorry. What are those characteristics that you really need on that? So for the audience and who's going to be watching this video on YouTube, when it comes to, with your experience with being an HR generalist and whatnot, what advice do you have for people in this day and age for looking for work? Anything that, COVID, I didn't tell you I was going to ask this question, so I'm putting you on the spot. But
yeah, I mean, the number one advice that I would have is that you matter. And what I mean by that is, so many times, and we've all been there, we're unemployed, we're struggling with money, we are going to grab at any opportunity that's in front of us. And no judgment. We have all been there.
We're desperate to find work.
Desperate, right? Yeah. But it's never worth it. Just as much as you were talking about the turnover that your bookkeeper was experiencing, you're going to have that same turnover, which is so hard to go from job to job to job, emotionally, financially. You are worth doing the self-exploration of figuring out, what is your life purpose? What makes you tick? What makes you happy? What are your skills? What are your passions? What kind of company do you want to work for? And even further than that, once you figure that out and you're actually in your job search, you could be at the last stage of an interview and something just in your gut feels yucky. Listen to your gut. It just might not be the right company for you for whatever reason. And it's never worth it. What you're going to do to your soul is not going to be worth landing that job, because likely if you turn that opportunity down, the right opportunity will come.
Yeah, because really, in many ways, what you're now having to address is you take a position that you weren't that enthusiastic about in the first place. It turns out to be not good, and now you either have a short employment stay on your resume,
Mhm.
employment stint on your resume, or
Yep,
a gap in your resume.
exactly.
And what you don't want, and I think people, well, especially in this day and age of COVID, gaps on a resume, everyone's going to be seeing that, right? Like it's going to be, it's on that, but it's how you just, and this is what I tell people, it's how you actually answer that question about why you have a gap on your resume. And it's where I'm from, we're like Texas, we're an oil and gas province. We live and die by the price of oil, and gas. And the type of oil we produce is heavy crude, which takes longer to actually produce, and it takes more energy and whatnot. So if you get something from Saudi Arabia, which is light sweet crude, you can practically, I'm overstating it, but you can put it right into the gas tank. It's like it's so little refinery, but when we have the oil sands, or what we call the tar sands, there's a lot more out of that. So you need a lot more money per barrel to be able to keep the economy running on that. And so there is lots of people here in this province who have gaps on their resume because that's what it is. As a matter of fact, I would suggest somebody that has no gap in 20 years of continuous service might actually not be a good, they might be seen as, well, can they adapt to the new world?
Yeah,
Right? Can they
yeah,
adapt to our situation? Do you have any thoughts
yeah.
on that?
Yeah, I think that's so interesting that you brought up the gaps on the resume because, I think there's so many rules out there or shoulds out there that we believe in any conversation that we're having, but particularly in the career search, right? We think, oh, I shouldn't have only short stints. I shouldn't have a gap on my resume. All these things that we used to believe. And now you are starting to see a trend of people being viewed as whole and humanistic. So, what I mean by that is if you have a gap on your resume and I'm going to ask you about it, and you're going to tell me, I was traveling the world for a year. Now I'm fascinated by, the experiences you've had. You now probably have more in-depth cultural understanding, can work with different cultures. Clearly, if you're a traveler, you're pretty adaptive. And, for you to kind of say, I'm putting myself first to have a life experience, I actually really value that. Now, if you told me I traveled because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life and my parents just gave me a bunch of money, those are different stories. So it's not just, oh, you have a gap on your resume. It's not just, oh, you traveled, but it's trying to get the big picture. And going back to what we were talking about before is, okay, then what can I glean from that? What am I learning about the values of this person, the skills of this person? And I think that we are seeing a trend in hiring managers being more open minded. You're seeing, there are a lot of industries that have historically only hired within the industry. So, for instance, I worked primarily in beauty and cosmetics companies, and they would just hire from the same competitors over and over. And in my last few years, there started to be a trend of like, oh, let's think more open minded. Let's look at where the talent is. I'm hiring for a marketer. They don't have to have come from Estee Lauder or Coty. I can look at a marketer in a totally different industry. So I think in general, you're just seeing this more open-mindedness with hiring. You're looking at different industries. You're looking at the whole human. You're looking at valuing life experiences. But I also think it's important on the actual employee and the job seeker to be a stand for that too. And to not just take that job because they're desperate, or to not give up on this cool year-long opportunity. We have to be a part of shifting that as well.
Somebody asked me this question last week, so I'm going to ask you, and then I'll tell you what I shared with him. He actually said, so he was 22, 23, doing a computer science degree or something like that. And he is saying, should I show my volunteer experience on my resume? So what's your thoughts on demonstrating your volunteer experience on your resume?
I'm so glad you asked that because it's one of my favorite things. um, Again, kind of on the heels of what I was just talking about, what is so important on a resume or how you're showing up in an interview is to show your entire human self. So, yes, of course, you need to show them your relevant experience, your relevant studies, and of course, you even want to focus on that. No question. But again, I need to picture you in my organization. So I want to know, what are your interests outside of work? Or do you care about volunteerism? Are you someone that can balance a full-time job and volunteer and maybe a leadership position of professional organization? You know, it is so, in my opinion, so crucially important to list everything that you're involved in, because it's going to paint the full picture of who you are, and it's going to show a little personality too. I only want to work in an organization who's going to look at my resume and say, that's so cool that she actually also is a professional dancer.
Right. Absolutely. So what I one of the things I said to I don't remember his name now, because I thought I did. So I said, okay, so think of it this way. I have 3 equal candidates that have the same kind of experience and whatnot. And one of those candidates shows that he volunteered at 22. He's volunteered for 7 years at teaching kids how to debate. That's his actual job. That's what he was doing volunteering. He's teaching grade 8ers how to actually debate. And I'm saying, you have so much merit by just doing that for 7 years. You have so much. You're just head and shoulders above everyone else, because it shows tenacity, it shows stick-to-itiveness, it shows that you're actually you're passionate about something, that you help people out. Your stock goes up on that. And what I will often say to people is that, what's another way of looking at your resume and cover letter? Well, they're indicators of your character.
Yeah.
And we're trying to find out, when we hire, who is this person in front of us? Who is this, not necessarily a character, but this particular person? And was there ever a focus when you were actually doing the HR gig with how expensive it is for hiring? Was that on you guys' radar?
Absolutely. I can't pull up a stat right off the top of my head, but we all the time, there's, for every hire, it's, X times what their salary would be once you get someone in the position. When you think about all of the recruiting fees, the time that position is empty. So either the effect on the business or the overtime of other employees. If you're using an outside recruiter, that's hugely expensive once you make that hire. Maybe the longer that you wait, maybe you're more desperate and you're hiring now at a higher salary. I mean, it is hugely costly to hire. And that's why turnover rate is so important for companies. I didn't even mention the time and effort for training. I mean, even once you get somebody in the role, getting them up and running, and then the other manpower who has to spend the time to train you as well.
Or do your role because you can't do it. So where do they get? Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Exactly. So it is so much more lucrative, for a company to retain their employees, as long as, they're reasonable and performing. But it's so much smarter. Turnover is hugely costly.
Yeah. The stats I've seen is double someone's salary when it's all said and done, or 1 to 1.5%. No, 1 to 2.5% of the company's profit is lost when they bring people over.
Yeah.
And and there's those other things that people don't understand, the actual everything you mentioned, but there's also the issues of organizational memory loss. Why are we using Zoom and not Skype? Skype is free. Why aren't we? I don't know. Sally took care of that. We did that. Oh, let's go back
Absolutely.
over, and then you migrate over, and you realize, oh, that's why we were there, because blah blah blah, and now you've lost confidence or whatever on that with your clients or your customers.
Yeah, you've taken on a whole analysis project that might have already happened.
That's right. That's right. But
Mhm.
because that person wasn't there, no one knows that. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's just bring that person up to speed. It's considered minimally half a year to a full year before someone's actually earning the keep, isn't it? Is
Yeah.
that, I've heard that?
Yeah.
On that. So,
Yeah, it takes about a full year for an employee to be fully integrated, not only into their role, but also into the culture of the company, and to feel 100% comfortable. And a year is a long time.
yeah, it certainly is. And also, I think they have to go through a full annual cycle to see everything, how it works together in that
Exactly.
position on that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So very cool. So, I had this one role where I was trying to find a registered nurse for a physician, and they had this mind, they need an RN, and are you familiar with chelation therapy?
Mm-mm.
So take an IV bag, put a whole bunch of vitamins in it, like high grade vitamins, put it into your body, and then basically you get a lot of vitamin dose, and it also cleans out heavy metals from your system, right?
Cool.
It's for people. Yeah, it's like take up to 4 hours to have one IV bag come to you. Depends on how hydrated you are and all that stuff.
Wow.
But it's so this physician who practices alternate medicine needed another RN nurse to do this, and it was just like, does it have to be an RN?
Mm.
Well, it says, well, no, we just need someone that actually is very skilled at opening veins. So what I ended up hiring for them was a paramedic.
Yeah.
Because paramedics, and as it turns, like nurses are not out of the box thinkers. Nurses always refer to the MDs, the MyRDs, the doctors, but
Mhm.
they don't think on their own. And paramedics, especially if they work out of the city, wherever they are,
Yeah.
have to think on their own. And they need a position. Again, it was just like, we need someone that can think, that's just not going to refer to the doctor on that whatnot. And so it was a massive change on what skills they needed, and it was clearly cheaper by bringing in a paramedic, because
Yeah.
they just needed to know how to put a needle in a vein, right? And these are like very collapsed veins. These are like veins that are not good, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great example. I was thinking about that conversation that I was saying before about even before you start recruiting and you're talking to the hiring manager and the team and trying to get the profile of this person, is a good HR person, a good HR business partner might push back in the way, like you're saying, a recruiter, an HR business partner, they might say, are you sure you really need that? Are you
Right.
sure that they need to have experience from within this industry and not without? Are you sure that they need, so many times on job descriptions, they just say, oh, they have to have a bachelor's or they have to have a master's. Well, challenging that. Do they really need to?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of this process of preparing to start recruiting, is that it is on the responsibility of the HR partner or the recruiter to push back a little.
Right. And say, well, hear me, how come?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the way we've always done it. And going, well, that's is there another way of looking at this position? Is there something else? There's that story of the mother preparing a ham and she cuts off the end of the ham. Have you heard the story?
No.
Okay, so it's the Easter and they're putting a ham in the oven, and mom cuts off the end of the ham, and the daughters who learning how to cook is, why do you do that? Why do you cut off the end of the ham? And mom says, I don't know, grandma always did it that way.
Yeah. Oh, I love
So
that.
let's call it grandma. And so, hey grandma, we're cutting off the end of the ham. Why do we do that? Or why did you do that? And he goes, well, it wouldn't fit in my pot the other way.
Oh,
That's the only reason they cut it
so
off, is because
funny.
it wouldn't fit. But it takes on this life of its own.
Yep.
Oh, we've always done it that way. Yeah, well, maybe that's where we should start. Right?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So, well, that's very cool. That was really, I really appreciate that information on the HR and whatnot, because so many people who come to these web events are looking for work, and they're trying to find that. So I know that that's going to be very valuable. I'd like now to shift to your work as a coach and whatnot. And you said a few things here. The first one is there a gender you work that you focus on, or that you find more success with or easier to work with?
No. I personally enjoy working with both and have clients of both. I do find that, just like in most mental health areas, females tend to be a little more open-minded to the experience.
Mhm.
But actually, one of my ideal client avatars that I like to talk about is that, top male exec that has never really talked about feelings in any way before. And, me being able to be that person to have a totally new type of conversation. That's one of my dream clients. So I do love that. But I would say the majority of my clients are female, but I work with both.
Okay, on that. Well, and I think there is. I'm gonna say something crass here, and
I'm
I know
ready.
it's not. Yeah, you're ready for it. The Leonardo DiCaprio played the Wolf of Wall Street in that movie where he did the whole. Do you know the movie I'm talking about?
Yes.
Anyway, so he went to jail, and after that actual real person got out, he was touring across to basically, and he was making great sales by people showing up on that. And my friend that was attending this, he said this one thing, and I believe her. He goes, men are going to pay money for two things: getting paid or getting laid.
I
Men will
believe that
spend
too.
men will spend money if it's going to further their career and that's going to further down the road, or if they're going to do better with women. That's what the whole pickup artist thing is, and
Yeah.
that whole subculture of how to be suave and debonair with women and whatnot, or debonair.
Yeah.
And so that has been really my experience also, is that because when I first started out as a coach, when I put a shingle out as a coach 8 years ago, it was specifically for men. And what I was finding is the men that needed me weren't coming to me, and the men that were coming to me didn't need me, because they were in that inquisitive mind space. They were in that place of going, well, what could I do differently on that? And I was actually having women saying, well, why can't you work with me? I'm going, I can work with you, and I need to, and so I was focused on men specifically, but they do seduce the proverbial canine when it comes to their personal. We don't work on our personal development unless we really feel like we just don't.
Yeah.
On that. So I could see why they would have that, but I also could see an executive talking to you about his feelings is probably a lot more safe than an executive talking to a male, right?
Yep.
And
I see that.
yeah, and somebody said to me once, you want to take a risk, tell a man how you feel. You tell a woman how you feel, they're going to love it. They're going to bend their hand, and they're going to be all inquisitive and all that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, it's the struggle with that. So I could see that would be probably a bit safer.
Yeah.
On that. Okay, so you said work on the deeper stuff. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's my very professional lingo. The deeper stuff.
Yeah.
There are a lot of. Let me back up. So, the definition of a coach and coaching is the belief that your client is whole, perfect, and complete as they are, and that there's nothing to fix. So, when I'm fully wearing my coach hat, I'm not giving any advice. My whole job is just to use powerful questioning to bring those answers that my clients have that's floating somewhere back here in their blind spot, and start to bring them forward in front of them so that they're identifying their own answers, their own next steps, their own commitments, their own awarenesses. And that's what true 100% coach mode is. Now, in my business, I balance between wearing my coach hat and my advisor or consultant hat. And I bridge the two. But I brought that up because there are so many career coaches out there that just do the part the advising part, right? And they're not using the word coach kind of in the right way. And that's valuable, right? Like we all need help on a resume. My resumes are my favorite thing in the world. I love my resume clients. So we all need help on a resume or to prep for an interview or all that good stuff. But what I have found is that a lot of career coaches out there that's just giving advice are forgetting that there's another human on the other side. So actually working with that human, instead of saying, here's what you should put on your resume, it's first backing up and saying, how do you want to present yourself?
Mhm.
What do you think is the most important things to communicate? So it's more of a partnership conversation. And then further to that is, you might have this deep desire to take on this one career, but believe that you can't. And so you're not even going to say it out loud. So you're paying all this money to go to a career coach that's helping you interview for this one job that's not going to make you feel fulfilled. But if I create the space and the type of conversation that's going to have you say, you know what, I really do know what I want to do with my life. I'm just too afraid to admit it because I don't think, I think I'm going to fail or I'm not going to be able to do it. By me creating that environment, then we can start to do the work, start to break down why you're not believing that you can't do it, or what are the next steps for you to start to at least get going. Or now when we're working on your resume, we're going to start working on it a little differently because we have a new target role in mind. So, this is totally not a knock on other career coaches. And a lot of people need just the tools, and that's totally fine for them. But for my clients, it's that we balance the tools with looking at the deeper emotional stuff.
Right. Absolutely. And I will do a knock on career coaches. I will actually say something less encouraging. And one of the reasons why I think they don't go to those places is because they don't know how. Because they're really using a rote formula. They're kind of talking about this is what you do. And I've actually only come to this conclusion, and it's going to sound very self-congratulatory or look how great I am, but people have given me feedback since I've been doing these webinars, because I have a elevator pitch diagnostic where they can hire me for like 90 minutes and whatnot. And the feedback I keep hearing from people is that you actually stop and think about the question and not just say something that you're supposed to say.
Yeah.
And I didn't really realize of course that's what I did, but I didn't realize that wasn't what a lot of people's experience with consultants or coaches or that kind of stuff, right? Is this kind of response. And that's the job I have with Expanse AI, which is a software company out of Ireland. When I asked the CEO, I says, why did you hire me for this? And he said, because you're not just giving me rote bullshit. You're not just saying the stuff that people we expect to hear. There's actually some meaning and depth into that. So I think there are a lot of people out there who are put a shingle out as a coach, but I wonder about their skill set, quite frankly, on that. So, okay. What else did I want to ask about I know I was going to ask. Just check the time here. I've got 12 more minutes before the top of the hour. So in a nutshell, what is the distinction between a coach and a counselor or therapy?
That's a great question. So with therapy, the clients are typically referred to as patients, which suggests like a diagnostic medical aspect. The conversations are very past-based and often rooted in like healing a trauma. And with coaching, the conversations are totally future-based. So it's all about, as I said earlier, you're perfect, whole, and complete as you are. You could continue your life and be totally fine. But with someone that's going to hire a coach, it's them raising their hand and saying, there's an area or a few of my life that I want to level up, something that I want to create, not because there's something I need to fix, not because there's something wrong with me, not because I have to, but I'm here desiring an increase of engagement in life, enjoyment of life, fulfillment of life. And that's why, if you look at my clients, the projects, that's what I like to call their goals, that they're working on have such a huge variety, because it's just, I have clients who I want to work on my relationship with my husband, with my mom. I want to get pregnant. I want to get out of debt. I want to land my dream job. I want to stop gambling the stock market.
Wasting my time.
It could be exactly. And because it's people who have a deeper desire. So it's totally future focused. It's not about there being anything wrong. It's just about them raising their hand and saying, I want to build something new and I need a little bit of support to do so.
I saw a, oh God, this is a while ago, an article on outcomes of therapists who worked for years with someone versus short-term, very focused on that. And the outcome of this study was that short-term intervention is as effective for long-term satisfaction as to a year or 2 years of counseling and whatnot. And I don't know about you, but this 50-minute hour bullshit, like I just get to, they just finally start talking about their truth with that in the 50 minutes, and it's the last 40 minutes that I'm actually able to start doing the work. And for, hopefully I'm not going to piss off any therapists out there. Well, it doesn't matter if I do, but the reality is I think the 50-minute hour keeps people stuck. I think I think you kind of get to that, and especially in the therapeutic background where people are talking about that, and then there's just like, okay, oh, we're done. It's 50 minutes. Then they go on to the next one, and then you start, and that's what I think keeps people stuck in the therapeutic process, because it's like, it is that focus on, there's a time and a place in it. I'm not saying there's not a time and place in it, but when does revisiting your past re-traumatize you to the point where you just, that's your story that you're staying in and whatnot. And that is one of the biggest differences between coaching and therapy is it is, what are your goals? Where do you want to go? What's getting in your way of doing those goals? Or what are your blind sides? Because I really like that when you use that word, that basically is shooting you in the foot that you might not be aware of and whatnot.
Yeah. What's interesting, so I personally, I work with a therapist and a coach, and oftentimes in a given week, I'll actually bring the same topic to both, but the approach and how we're talking about it is totally different. So, with my therapist, it's okay, what happened in your past that has you in this pattern and has you in this functioning in this way that has brought us to this moment, or why is it giving you, what happened in your past that's making it give you so much anxiety or frustration or anger. And I think that there's so much healing to be done to understand and then ultimately release whatever that past-based conversation is. And then when I'm bringing the exact same conversation to my coach, it's like, cool, what's your vision for how it will go differently? And what needs to happen? What's your first step for it to go differently? And maybe we're not going as far, into our past as I did with my therapist, but I'm understanding, I'm noticing that there's a pattern here, and now I get to choose for it to go differently. So it's, the exact same situation can be supported by both modalities, but the way they're going to approach it is totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just have to do something really quick here. 1 second.
Yeah.
My daughter and I are making pea soup, and yeah, I figured it's
pea soup. I don't think I've ever had pea soup.
It's a very French Canadian thing, and it's stuck to the bottom, so I had to turn it off. And well, actually, here, let me show you.
Oh, the soup is coming to us.
This is what I make my soup in.
Wow, it's huge.
Yeah, and this is the medium-sized one. I actually have a bigger pot than this. This is 20 quarts, and I have a 30-quart stock pot.
And how long will that last you?
Well, depends how many people I give it to. So I build my community. I build my community by giving, by feeding my people and whatnot. I have an
love
apron
it.
that says all my friends are well fed or
Yeah.
eat well. Yeah, so
Community through food.
yeah, well, breaking bread. So
Yeah.
anyway, I suspected it was on too high, and I hope it's not too burned. Just gonna, I hear some noise, so I'm just gonna mute some people there. Okay, we are coming up to the top of the hour. We're gonna go about 5 more minutes, and I do want to talk about limiting beliefs, but I don't want to do that until after the next until we get past the video, because I don't want to interrupt that and whatnot.
Yeah.
So you said what shows up in your life shows up everywhere. And when I started to get a grasp on how insidious some of my issues are, some of my beliefs, and how it filter, how the different tentacles it has over the place, that's when I really, and this would have been in my 20s and my 30s, but that belief system, I think what you were saying or you're alluding to is that, just doesn't hit you in one place in your life. It hits you, so if you have fears around money, that's going to show up in many different places on that. Any other thoughts you'd like to share with that?
Yeah. I mean, with your example, fears around money, right? Like that could be an example of someone who's taken a job out of desperation. Maybe they're only dating people who are in a better financial situation. Maybe they are engaging in gambling. There's so many different ways. And I'll share a personal example. One thing I'm really practicing is that's been challenging for me is asking for what I want. And that has shown up everywhere, right? When I was still at my 9 to 5, being able to advocate for myself to my boss when I didn't think she was being fair, or in my, marriage, being able to ask for, if I'm afraid, then I'm not going to get what I need there. Or maybe I'm disappointed by my friendships because I'm not asking for what I want there. Or maybe now my coaching business isn't going to grow because I'm not asking people to work with me. So I think that's the kind of thing. And I know we're going to talk about limiting beliefs in a minute, but where we have a pattern of avoiding something or actively doing something, it actually permeates into every area of your life, and probably in ways that you don't even notice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just from pardon me, from my own personal experience and whatnot. One of my first serious girlfriends said to me after about 3 or 4 months, just like, we're not progressing as far as we should. We're not going as deep as we should. And I'm going like, what? I didn't know, right? About that. It's like, okay. And the relationship ended. And then my next very serious relationship, it was very much the same thing is that we're not on the same page, Luke. And it was just like, oh, this is the twice. How many more times do I have to go through that? Yeah, a couple more times before I heard that. But, one of my favorite sayings is, if enough people tell you have a tail, maybe you should turn around and take a look.
Yeah.
Right. On that and see really what those kind of issues are. So, okay, well, what we're going to do is let's get into the video that I'm going to play. This is on the shenanigans list. It's quite high. It's like 7 out of 6. It's that high on this. I'm just making that up as I go along. But be advised, there is a skeleton in it. So if you don't like skeletons, you might want to look away. And so this video is, what's the length of it here? Come out wherever you are. Let me just get this. Set up. Okay, so this is almost 2 minutes long. It's 1:44, and it's the bare bones on Mark Twain and being a crankcase. So let me just do this. Wait. I didn't share my audio and video, so I have to do that again. So like this. Chris, can you let me know if you see okay, and just let me know if sound's not coming through. So here we go.
This is Bare Bones Videos. I'm Luc Bouchard, and this is my co-host Phil. And as usual, Phil's got some thoughts to share with us today. The first one comes from Thomas Edison. Many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. But you know, Phil, that's a really good quote, because if anyone has a good opinion on success and giving up, it's Edison. Because what, he worked on the light bulb a gazillion times before it actually became successful. Well, Phil, what's your thoughts on Edison's words? From Mark Twain. A person with a new idea is a crank until the idea succeeds. Yeah? And, well, from someone who gets his ideas and inspiration from a skeleton, I guess I can really relate to that. If you have a favorite quote, send it to us, and Phil will send you a picture of he and I mucking about. Please like this video. Also add a comment to below under it, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Luc Bouchard, and I encourage you and all my clients to find your own truth and live a free and glorious life. Okay, you take care now.
All right, well, that silliness was brought to you by a guy who has too much time on his hands. Too much time on your hands. What are you going to do to fill your time? I see we have some more people who have joined us. Welcome. And I'm interviewing Gabriella, and we're talking about her role as a coach and working on some deeper issues. And we were talking about limiting beliefs. So, what question do I want to ask about limiting beliefs? Let me just see here, make sure. Do you think that people actually have limiting beliefs? I'm sorry, do people think do you think people are aware of their limiting beliefs?
Most of the time, no.
Okay. And why then how do they become cognizant of their limiting beliefs then, would you say?
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe this is a cop-out, but my answer is by working with a coach. So basically, the idea of a limiting belief is a story or a truth that we tell ourselves that's repeated in the back of our heads, but not even to the point that we realize it, right? So, and going back to that therapy conversation, it's often something that we've learned over time from our past, something that maybe we learned to protect us, but now is no longer serving us. So for instance, I might have a belief, I don't know how, I don't have an entrepreneurial spirit. That was something that I believed for a very long time that held me back from taking the plunge and building my business. But I didn't know that that was the story I was telling myself. I just knew something feels yucky. I'm scared. I don't know if I can do this. And so working with a coach, what they do is they serve as a mirror. So they might literally repeat back the words that you say. They might, as I was talking about before, using those powerful questioning to really get to the deepest. What are you actually believing? What are you actually telling yourself? I have a belief that I've identified with my coach that wherever I am is not good enough. I need to be somewhere else. And that's caused me to, even if my business is successful and I've only been doing this full time a handful of months and I'm doing great, I'm still believing I should be doing more. I'm not doing enough. It's not good enough. And so this belief that wherever I am, I should be somewhere else creates me not ever being satisfied, not ever being comfortable, not ever celebrating where I'm at. And so, it can be challenging, especially those deepest beliefs to really identify them. I think, outside of working with a coach, I think journaling is important. There's a certain exercise that I'm going to talk about on Friday, actually, that can be helpful to pull those out. If you're just totally honest with yourself of like, what is the story I'm believing here? I think that's the question. What's the story at play?
Well, and on that note, since you introduced your talk on Friday, let's just show some, nope, that's not what we want. There we go. So this is the talk that Gabrielle is doing on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I just said your name in French, Gabriella. It's Gabriella.
That was great. I loved it.
Okay. And so it's a Widen Your Gaze, which is where I have guest speakers come in. So we can see that from over here. Oops. No. There we are. So why don't you give some talk? Why don't you just talk about what people can expect on Friday and just what we're going to talk at a higher level, of course, because this is to try and get people interested in coming to it. So plug your show.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've talked a lot so far in this hour of the different all of the work that I do and the different types of clients and services, and I work with businesses and individuals. But if I had to bottom line, what do I do? It's really addressing when a person, an individual, or a business has a desire, has a dream, but it feels so impossible or so overwhelming that they don't even know where to begin. And that's really the work that I do is three main things: connecting them to their vision, getting them to a place where they actually believe it's possible, and making sure that it's really rooted in a deep commitment. And if those three things can happen, then you can get unstuck from that thing that feels so impossible. And so on Friday, I'm just going to talk a ton. I'm giving away like all of my secrets. I am doing like coaching, like deep dive, like here you go. And I will share a few different exercises that you can do on your own, a few different things that you can explore yourself, and some just secrets for anything that you have in your mind, a goal that feels really impossible. It's the beginning of the year. What can we do to start getting a little bit unstuck? Because you deserve to live and meet that goal.
Have you ever had the experience where somebody will has a belief that they can't achieve a goal, and it's actually true they can't? Because there's that, it's like I could want to be an oceanographer, but until I'm prepared to move away from the bald ass prairies, like, it's kind of like there's some realism that comes with it, right? And and that kind of stuff. So has your experience been that there's a misalignment with people on what their dreams, and has that been your experience?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I would say that primarily when my clients are coming to me, the majority of the time their dreams are absolutely attainable, and it's themselves holding themselves back. With that said, yes, sometimes there are goals that seem a little out there. But I would say two things. Number one, even in your example, right? Like you'd have to relocate and that seems impossible. Well, if my job as a coach is just to ask questions to start to explore this goal, then through our conversations and from possibility, maybe they're going to say, my ultimate commitment is to be an oceanographer. Was that your example?
Yeah.
And I know that what I need to do is relocate. Or, oh, through these conversations, I'm noticing that, yes, I want to be an oceanographer, but I'm more committed to staying put. Maybe let me look at what else is available for me to do that might still scratch that itch that I have to be an oceanographer. You know, what we might even explore. What about being an oceanographer excites you? And what else can give you that same gift? And lastly, I will say, you know, I've even had clients that have said things that, I mean, especially on the business side, like I work with clients who are, you know, entrepreneurs similar to me, starting a new business, and they, you know, will set goals for themselves that, in my opinion, are a little out there and maybe not as attainable, but the experience for the client to be truly believed in, to be truly championed, and to just for someone to say to them, let's try it. You want to make, you know, 15 grand in your first month of a business? Like, you know, let's do it. And just that experience of being believed in will get them in motion. And maybe they don't meet that goal, but likely they're going to have a lot of breakthroughs still, and a lot of breakthroughs in like, oh, I didn't meet the 15K, but because I was striving to 15K, I made 2K in my first month in a business. And
Right.
now I have belief in myself. And now I have all of these learnings, and I know how to use support, and I know how good it feels to be championed. So really the job of the coach is like, whatever goal you got, let's figure it out, because either the goal's going to shift, or you're going to have some breakthroughs on the way, or the best one would be, or you meet it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, do you find that people have a pretty realistic sense of whether or not their goal is doable, or that maybe that they know that they're getting in their own way? Is that, do you find that?
I would say neither. I would say that a lot of my clients will come to me with, at least at the beginning when we're working, easy goals, right? Because the whole reason that they're working with me is because they have some sort of desire that feels unattainable or feels scary. And as much as it's a huge breakthrough just in hiring me, they still have those limiting beliefs
Right.
playing.
Right.
So I would say the most often is that somebody will say to me, I'm declaring that I'm going to get a new job and I'm going to get it in 18 months. And I'm like, cool. How's about in 2? You
Yeah.
know, and 2 is totally like doable, but it's that they're holding themselves back. So I would say what's most likely, at least at the beginning of working with me, is that it's they're safe goals.
Okay. And they're attainable because they're limited and whatnot on that. And I honestly believe that if you set a goal for a year and a half down the road, then you really are putting that, unless there's a really good reason for that. I don't know what that would be, but just like maybe the next time they're accepting the admittance for some sort of post-secondary is
Right.
then that's like realistic on that as opposed to on that. So, okay. What was my other? Actually, we're going to open up the questions right now to the audience, because I do have a tendency to be a bit of a pig when it comes to my guest time. Oink. So, are there questions? And our preference would be for you just unmute and preferably turn on your video camera and just ask the question out. I know some people, sometimes they can't because of their technology, so they need to ask it in the chat. But what questions does anyone have for Gabriela? Oh, and Hirsch has a question. Go ahead, Hirsch. Just
So if we do want to hire you, what's the process for us being able to reach out to you and hire you?
Sure.
Um,
I can put my website here and then in the chat, and right on my website, you're able to schedule time with me, either for a quick informal discovery call that we can just talk about, what you're up to, or you can even schedule a 1 hour complimentary session just to get a feel for what it feels like to work with me.
okay. So just to make sure I'm clear on this. So you do have a kind of quick discovery, but but you do have a complimentary consultation just to see if, and that's where you're looking to see if it's a good fit between the two of you.
Exactly.
Okay. Great. Excellent question, Hirsch. Thank you.
and then I'm sorry. In regards to salary requirements, how flexible are companies in regards to salary requirements, and how do you negotiate that if someone doesn't want to put forward their salary requirements up front, or the company doesn't want to disclose those, or how do you bridge that gap? Like if I supposedly want to hire, or if I want to apply for a job, but I don't want to put my salary requirements down, like, well, what's the best way of negotiating that or navigating that bridge?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the worst question, right? Because you don't want to lowball yourself. You don't want to, oh, thank you.
Put in the chat, Chris.
I think one way to do it is to be honest and say what you're looking for, and hope for the best, but follow up right away. You answer the question and then you say, but what's most important to me is the opportunity. My salary, this is what I'm looking for, but my salary is flexible for the right opportunity. That is, that's the best way to get out of it. I mean, if they're asking for a reason, because they want to kind of put you, they don't want to invite you to a many level interview process if you're totally out of their range. So you do want to be honest. You don't want to not answer the question. But I think in order to show that you're not just here for the money, I think it's super important to say, this is what I'm looking for. That said, I'm very open, based off of the right opportunity. And I'm very excited about this potential opportunity.
And I'm actually going to weigh on this also, because I am asked this question quite a bit in my dealing with difficult interview questions. And please support Gabriella, or say you see it differently on that, because I certainly, because this is also a Canadian perspective and most of the audience is American on that. So when you're asked, when you're in an interview, and if the money comes up, the salary expectation comes up very early in the interview, that's not good. And generally they're trying to determine if they can afford you, and sometimes if you even know, they're actually trying to see what the market is going to bear for the price. So they're going to say, are we in actually line for what other people are paying for this position? And you want to defer the salary expectations as long as possible. Ideally, you want to be talking about salary when they're offering you a position. That's where you're the strongest position. That's when you're in the strongest, you have the strongest position to answer that. And so if the question is, what are your salary expectations? I would counter that with, are you at liberty to share the grid with me, or the scale? And I've actually had people, when I've applied, they said, yeah, it's from this range to this range. He says, yep, that's acceptable. So they're just trying to figure out. But here's the thing. If they're asking your salary expectations and it's early in interview, what are you actually negotiating on? What are you giving them a number for? You haven't determined how much they want you to work. You haven't determined, you don't know if there's going to be holidays. You don't know if you're having to travel. You don't know if you have to pay for parking. Something that's extremely more important in the United States and Canada is your benefits. And the thing is, I know people would take less money if they have greater benefits.
Yeah.
So with all due respect, I have a hard time giving you a number because I don't know enough about the position, and I don't want to overestimate or underestimate it because I don't know what's required of me in this position. I have children. If there's a lot of evenings and weekends, I'm gonna have to find childcare, which means I have to charge more for that if you're having me do this. So I don't know I have a hard time giving you that answer because I don't know what's expected of me in the role.
Yeah.
So if you want to give me the grid, then I can answer that. But it's not buying into that question too soon because then in my experience, they'll make their mind up. Yes, they'll have just decided out if they can't afford you or not. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I really love that because I think it totally is true, right? Base salary means very little when you don't know exactly, as you said, about PTO, about bonus, about benefits, about hours worked, relevant now, number of days in the office versus, working remotely.
Right.
So I think that's a great point. And it also shows that you're being thoughtful about the job and wanting to really think about what makes sense in terms of your whole, life experience. But what I do love that, Luke, that you said is asking them, can you share the band with me? And then confirming, yes, that's a line, or no, that's not. Because, to the company's credit of asking early, their biggest thing is they want to know that you're not totally out of the ballpark, right? If you're going to be baseline expecting something so much more than they've budgeted for, then you're going to wait. They don't want to waste your time. They don't want to waste their time bringing you through 4 levels of interviews if you guys are so on different pages. So I love that question, Luke, of turning it on them and then just confirming to them, yes, that's aligned. Or maybe, no, it's not. But I think that's a great answer.
And so you have to be ready for the response of saying, sorry, we're not moving forward unless you give me a number. Because they could pull that. They could say, sorry, we're not going. And I would do that. I've interviewed more people than I could possibly remember, but I could see saying, no, sorry, you need to answer. we're not moving forward because for the reason that alone is we don't know if you're within our price range or whatever it is on that. And so if they're insistent, you have to have the number ready. Yeah. Furthermore, you have to know what your absolute minimum is. Mm-hmm. This is how we started like an hour ago about what Gabrielle is saying is that if you don't know what you can live with and then you take a position, well, let me put it this way. The paramedic that I was responsible for hiring, he didn't last 3 months. We dismissed him. In Canada, you have up to 3 months to lay somebody off. After 3 months, you actually have to either pay him severance or you have to fire them. You can't just up to 3 months. You just can't. After 3 months, you actually have to give them a reason for that. Up to 3 months, you can get rid of them anytime you want to on that. So what ended up happening is the question that I know I asked him in the interview is this a salary you can live with? And he goes, yes, absolutely. And what we found out is he was moonlighting on evenings and weekends to basically as a paramedic. And my employer, the doctor, said he is impaired if he's working that much. Not that he's drinking or doing drugs, but just the idea is that he is not able to do his job because he is fatigued and it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
And in that case, the who I worked with, the actual office manager, I ended up firing him because she was just so freaked out by the process. And I don't like doing it. It's not as if I enjoy it, but it wasn't that hard because just like, we were very clear. He said this, yeah. and you're working so much and you're going to affect the quality of the patients, or you're affecting the quality of care in this clinic. Yeah. So you're gone. And I had no problem saying that because we were clear that he could not do both jobs and he indicated he could.
Yeah.
On that, right? Hirsch, was there another question?
I mean, do you have a conversation before you let someone go about, what your expectations are and if that can be changed before you let them go, or do you just go ahead and let them go?
Well, this is where I think Gabriella and I are on the same page, is that if you have a very thorough job description that is covering all the core competencies or the things that you need, you shouldn't have to have that conversation. Because in my world, how can you write a good posting if you don't have a good job description? How can you ask good interview questions if you don't have a good job description? How can you assess someone's if they're doing their job if you don't have a good job description? It always comes back to the job description. And if the job description is thorough and the employer and the employee have a conversation as to what that is, and the hiring and the person that's responsible for that would know within weeks if that person's going off course. They would know within fairly quickly if that person is going to, if it was a good hire or not a good hire. And so in my mind, if I am supervising you, Hirsch, you are you're directly responsible. I'm directly responsible for your success. If I'm firing you, it's not going to be new information. There'll be verbal warnings. There'll be you'll get your verbal warnings. You'll get your warnings on file. Of course, the verbal warning goes on file anyway. You say that, you tell them, and there is nothing that's going to come along that's going to be a surprise to you.
Yeah.
If you're doing your job right, if you're terminating someone, it should not be a surprise to that person.
So this paramedic actually had performance issues before he was let go within the 90 days.
Well, the fact that he was, well, this is the issue. The fact is that he wasn't even smart enough to keep it to himself was a problem.
Okay.
Because he didn't even look at the optics of it. And so now we're actually talking liability because he's not even savvy enough to go, I shouldn't say this on that, because it was clearly spelled out in the fact is that he couldn't do that in the role before that. It's not that he couldn't do it. It's that it was his behavior was actually his performance was suffering from it. So there was those issues there. But anytime anyone gets terminated for the sake of the company not getting fired, it should not be new information. Would you agree with that, Gabriella?
100%. Yes. Any performance conversation, whether it's a year-end review or a firing or a promotion, none of it should be a surprise, because you're having a good manager is having these performance conversations regularly, sometimes formally, sometimes informally, sometimes quick. Hey, after that presentation, I just wanted to tell you, here's what you did really great. Here's what you didn't do great. Nothing should be a surprise because you're in constant communication, you're in partnership, you're in relationship, you're getting feedback. And when you're going down the road of like, oh, your performance is really struggling, as Luke said, most companies are going to have a very formal process of, a verbal warning or a written warning or a performance improvement plan. But either way, if the company's smart and fair, they're going to be having these conversations, whether it's in, Canada in Luke's 3-month start of the gig, or in America and you've been with the company 12 years. If there's a performance issue, these conversations ideally are happening. It's not a surprise. You've been given a final warning or performance improvement plan, and you've been told you need to meet X, Y, and Z, or face termination.
That are daily, that are measurable, that you can say, you can point to stuff on that, right?
Exactly.
Now, so let's actually take this a bit more proactive, be a bit more of a proactive lens on this. What would be the questions you would suggest that people ask their potential employer in that interview about their assessment process? What would that look like of their employee performance engagement or performance assessment?
That's a great question. Yeah. I mean, I would ask exactly that. I would ask all about like, what is their cycle, right? Do they have formal year-end reviews, mid-year reviews? What is their, comp schedule? Do they give, our comp increases, annual? What's their bonus program? What is it based off of? Are they, even just asking about the manager's individual style, right? Like, do we have weekly touch bases? Is there time in those touch bases to get feedback on my performance? Do you tend to be someone that does more of the formal feedback or the informal feedback? You could even ask, how would I know if I'm doing really well? Or how would I know that I'm struggling? Or what support structures are in place if I'm struggling in a particular area? What is your process, your performance management process, if I really am struggling? So just getting to know both on the company level as well as who your manager would be, just getting totally inquisitive about performance management in general, and then the support for your talent.
And this is a question, I think it takes a bit of chutzpah to ask this question, and you definitely have to feel it right. But a question I think is definitely fair game is, how are you going to ensure my success as your employee? Like what are you going to do to make sure that I'm or how do you help your staff reach those levels of success and whatnot? And there's also a part that if you're asking questions and these questions are not really being embraced or seen as good, then that's a warning sign for you also. The fact that it might not be a good fit for you because they actually may not have that culture of wanting to improve people and whatnot. So when I had a role where for over 3 years I was offering best practices as a consultant on how to lay people off. And it's a worldwide organization, and it was one of the best jobs I ever had. Not because I enjoyed seeing people be laid off, but it was just very rich in many different ways. And so when I was with when I was doing this job, we were sponsoring an award. There was a conference. There's a conference in Alberta. It's an HR conference, and it happens every year. And the company I was working for was sponsoring an award as for brand recognition. And there was another company, and it was a trucking company. We're talking like the ones that manufactures a truck: Peterbilt, Kenworth, Mack, Volvo. Like, we're talking the trucking companies, and I can't remember which one it is. And so we're killing time at this table while we're waiting for these awards to come up. And we were my coworker and I were talking with this person about the euphemisms that we use when we lay people off. So it's a hard exit, it's a soft exit. We show them the door, they're laid off. And this person, who was very senior, he was the top of HR within this organization, said this: "We just see people we have to lay off as cancer." And it was just like, did I actually just hear you say you referred to them as cancer? And what that spoke volumes to me is a lack of capacity on their part to see how they contribute to their bad hires. Because if it's just their fault, they're just cancer, we have to cut them out, we have to remove them, then that's the problem. But there's no ownership on the fact that, did we set this person up? Did we actually do something? Was our process bad? Did we do something that are we going to be here again? And that's what I find you really have to wait. You have to kind of, if you can, figure out is, what is the culture that is hiring you, and do they care about you? Do they care about actually your well-being, or are you just a person? Because there's some companies out there who actually believe, we're paying you salary, that's where our responsibility ends. We're giving you, we pay you on time, we pay you how much we're going to pay you. Your job here is to show up and to perform and do what your job is, full stop.
Yeah.
Do you see that culture's out there as much as it used to be, Gabriella? That's still? I
don't. I think that it definitely exists, but I would say not as much. I think that the idea of management has expanded, the idea of development has expanded, the idea of leadership, the idea of human resources. It's now all about looking at the whole human and how can you make them succeed? Because if your employees are succeeding, then you are succeeding as a business. So, I mean, that's where you're seeing these large learning and development programs come into play. Development as a human being, development in terms of their job function and their capabilities. Focus. I mean, even you look at benefits, right? It's not just at least in America, it's not just you're giving them benefits because you're supposed to, but when your employees are healthy and taken care of, then they're not calling out sick. They're not calling to the doctor in the middle of the workday. They're, rested and focused. I mean, another trend you'll see in benefits is, a lot of companies will provide you with access to like free financial advisors. Why? Because research has shown that employees who are struggling financially are less productive at work because they might be stressed. They might be using that time again to call the bank, to work through things. But when they have certain aspects of their life taken care of, then they can be more productive at work. So I really see the trend. If you look at learning and development, if you look at benefits, you look at management as really developing the human being. I do think kind of the cancer example, as human beings, we don't like to be responsible. We're wired to point our fingers at everyone else. So I do think there is an opportunity for leadership to say, okay, this person needs to go and that's fine, but what can we learn about that? Right? What did we do in terms of hiring? What did we do in terms of training? What did we do in terms of development? Compensation, benefits, culture, was there anything that we can learn, even looking at trends, the certain employees who, were either fired or quit. What do we need
turnover rate within a position that just you can't just seem to retain anyone. And if that's
what do we need to learn?
Yeah, exactly. On that. So very cool. Other questions? Just unmute and.
My question straddles, Gabriella, some of what you're talking about today, and I think the Friday topic, but unlike the focus of what you've been talking about and career development, I'm at the point in my career, first of all, where I made a lot of the mistakes that both you and Luke have talked about. I probably would have done well if I had had a good life coach along the way, taking jobs for the salary, taking jobs for the prestige, taking jobs because I was desperate or whatever. And through my own bumps in the road, I've finally found my place. So my question is twofold. One, it has to do with shoulds, because as I'm approaching 70, I should be retiring, but I like what I'm doing. But the second part is because all of the career pieces have come together and are such a central part of my identity, I couldn't even come to you and say, this is what I want to do next, because it's a void.
Yeah.
So it's those two things, the shoulds and what do I do, or do I do nothing?
I love that. Yeah. We were talking about shoulds. We were talking about earlier, I think even about a resume and having gaps in a resume. I think that was before you logged on. So we were talking about shoulds briefly, but I jokingly alluded that we could talk about that with anything. And I have a sign in my office that says, I'm not sitting in my office right now, otherwise I would see it, but it says, what standard are you comparing yourself to? So is this a standard or a set of rules that you decided for yourself, or this imaginary, external belief that what I was talking about earlier, that I should be somewhere other than where I am. And, you know, shoulds will always exist, right? Like people have judgments, people are afraid to stand out, they're afraid that people are going to treat them unfairly or whatever.
Judge them.
But you know, the more that you can realize that YOLO, what Drake said, you only have one life to live. And your life matters, right? So like the more that you can quiet those voices of the shoulds, and they're always there, we're human, but the more that you can quiet them and actually do the self-exploration of, what do I want to do? It's your one life. Like, you deserve it. You get to do that. And I think that goes into your second question, which is absolutely career is a huge part of your identity, and not just identity, but just logistically, like how you're spending your time in the day. But I would see that almost a similar exploration is kind of when my clients come to me and say, how do I figure out what I want to do with my career? I could see a similar conversation of like, how do I figure out what I want to do after, right? Like, what are those things that, not about a fix, like we were saying before, but what are those things that you want to create in your life? What do you want to level up? What do you want to do that's new? What do you want to accomplish? Because I'm sure, you know, that there are things that you still have desire, and maybe the issue is just letting go of those shoulds, saying them out loud, and starting to plan to make them happen.
And two things I would add to that is the first one, and I learned this, I don't know, 10 years ago, or seems longer, but it's like, is it true? Is it real? So we have this idea of that, you know, at 70, and by the way, you look pretty damn good for pushing 70. I'm very impressed. Like, that's nicely done. And because I never would have guessed on that. So, you know, is it true? Is it real? Is it like we have this noise in our head? We're all survivors. Everyone on this call is a survivor. We made it to this point one way or another. It doesn't matter how old you are. And so we've got to this point. We've had, you know, we've showed up here. And of course, we're going to have baggage. We're going to have our warts, wrinkles, and wonderment. And, you know, and sometimes it's just like, is it true? Is it real? And what Gabrielle is saying that I just really want to pick up also is that, you know, I think the question really comes down to is, where's your meaning and purpose in life? And when you have that, when you can identify what that meaning and purpose is and whatnot, and what really drives you and thrives you, and, you know, at different stages of life, you know, there are people that their meaning and purpose is their grandchildren. That is their main, and if they don't have that, they are absolutely, you know, if they have a bad relationship with their children and they're exempt, they're cut out from their grandchildren's life, as, you know, as awful as that is, you know, where's their meaning and purpose? And then they're really lost because that's where their focus was. So we know that good mental health comes when we have a defined meaning and purpose and we can move forward in life and whatnot. And that's really what it would be is, you know, what defines your meaning and purpose in life to get you out of bed and to do that? And, you know, do you need your work to do that? Do you need your work to fulfill that meaning and purpose? Or is that just something that is, you know, a nice bonus after that? So many people retire and they don't live much left long after they retire because their meaning and purpose is now gone. Yeah. Right. So yeah. So those were a couple of my thoughts. Was that helpful?
Yes. Thank you both.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
We're at about 17 more minutes before we're out of time on this. What other questions do we have before I start hogging the conversation again?
Chris.
I had a couple. So
I have to check on something. I'll be right back. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, so this question is for both Luke and Gabriella. And I think probably Gabrielle's going to want to go first on this. So any comments about cases where companies, yeah, so sometimes managers could do what's called manage someone out. If they really don't want a certain employee that's possible, then they will, I mean, everything from fire to encourage them to just even refer them to another company as extreme.
Yeah. Yeah. Managing someone out. It's a great term. So I would say a number of things. I would say in the ideal world, you're only terminating if somebody is truly not performing well, and there's the belief that they're not going to be able to perform to the standards that you need. And so if it's that there's a personal difference or whatever reason that the manager just wants the person out and it's not as founded in the performance issue, ideally you have checks and balances in place. So ideally you have an HR department that's pushing back on that and maybe then coaching the manager of how to work more effectively with this employee, or you have, their boss or their boss's boss, right? Ideally you have checks and balances. I'm not saying it always happens. But managing out also is the term that's used to prepare to let someone go, right? So oftentimes companies will use a specific form called a performance improvement plan, a PIP. And it lays out, okay, here's where your performance hasn't been as strong. Here's what we need to see. And in the next 90 days, I need to specifically see A, B, and C, you're meeting certain measurables, or you're turning certain things in, or you're not missing a deadline, whatever. And the beautiful thing about a performance improvement plan is it's actually two things in one. It's used for an employee that you truly believe in, that just needs a little push, that's struggling, but can do it. And so you're laying out the steps for them to literally improve their performance. Okay, you need to do these things, and then your performance is going to improve, and you're going to develop, and you're going to learn, and da-da-da-da-da. But it's also showing you the behind the scenes HR stuff. It's also could be that you're a little bit setting them up for failure, right? That it's somebody that is not going to perform well. You need to get out. And so you're laying out and you say, I need you in the next 90 days to do these 6 things, knowing that they're likely not. And if they don't, then you have the grounds to say, sorry, you got to go. And so it's a beautiful tool for either goal, kind of if your goal is to get them to stay, but you need a push to improve performance, or you really need them out. But then you've done your due diligence as a company, right? You've put it in writing. They're aware. You've given them the chance. You've written out saying, here's what you need to do. You've given them the opportunity to develop, and they just aren't.
I've had to fire less than I can count on one hand. And when that's happened, I have no problem doing it because I feel pretty confident that I've done everything to help that person out. Like I've gone, because I take my, response, being a manager, managing people, I take it very, very seriously. But the amount of people that basically knew that they were going to get so I may have only had to fire this many people, but there's probably multiple hands of, well, no, that's not true, but people saying it's very clear, if you don't go, you're eventually going to get fired. So you might want to make that choice on your own, so you can say that you weren't fired on that. And I've given that, saying you have a choice to make here. You can resign, or we can fire you. And which would you rather have on that? There's something else I was going to add about and there's times when we're actually enabling people by keeping them around, and we're not helping people. And there's support, then can turn in enabling and whatnot. And so are we at times really helping that person for their personal maturations, for their professional development, if they're in a job where they're not performing and we're not really moving them forward on that. So there's another thing to that. But ultimately, you know, what's the saying? You never leave a job, you leave a
Manager.
Right. So if you have a manager that doesn't want you there, do you really even want to work there? Like, you know, and yes, there's going to be circumstances where you can't afford it. You don't know where you're going to go to, all that stuff. But, you know, a manager can make your life pretty flippin' miserable if they want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. A story I like to tell is when I was doing the layoffs, I was the consultant of laying people off. I was brought into a plant that was laying off this supply chain manager, and the vice president who was laying him off flew in from another city to do the notification. And so what would typically happen is I would go in and I'd meet with the person the person doing the notification. So the manager or VP or someone higher up the food chain, whoever that person was responsible for them, they do the layoff generally, and the HR person. And so we start the conversation by this VP saying, this person is outstanding at what he does. He'll have no problem finding another job. And as soon as I tell him he's being laid off, I have to convince the rest of the staff that his coworkers, that we haven't lost our mind. I'm going, really good at what he does, have no problem finding a job, and everyone's going to think you're crazy. There's something about the story here that's not right, or it's not full. I'm not getting the whole picture. I do the layoff, I do the notification, everything goes off without a hitch. I escort him to his office so he can get what he needs that he didn't want to leave behind, walk him to his vehicle, see him go through security. I've done my job. I go back and I debrief with the HR manager, because the VP at this point had already left the factory. And so this is what the VP tells me. He says, for the 16 years of his 17 years here with us, this person was one step removed from corporate. And then last year we brought him into corporate. And what we discovered is he's a pain in the ass, he's passive aggressive, and he never raises his hand when he should be. And we're not putting up with him. And frankly, it's his previous supervisors that let him slide. That basically on that. So we're deciding we're not going to put up with it. The most interesting thing of this story was his severance. His severance was $200,000. So a $200,000 bad fit, a $200,000 hit to the morale of the staff because they thought he was a great guy, to their client base because he's no longer there, to figuring that out. They figured it was worthwhile getting rid of him for $200,000. So companies are focusing on good fits. They are focusing on basically what they want to make sure that someone's going to last a long time. And that's why what I'd recommend is when you're looking for work, your due diligence is to really demonstrate in the interview how you're a good fit within that position, how you bring value, how you're going to basically be ready to move forward with it, especially in a world where there's so many people that are out of work right now.
Yeah.
Okay, we have about another 8 minutes. Is there other questions what other questions do we have before what are they? Because I have one more question before we wrap this up. So I'm not seeing any hands go up.
Chris has another question.
Okay. Go ahead, Chris.
All right. So the other question is, okay, so let's say if an employee would receive this PIP, performance improvement plan, can you say anything about whether it makes most sense to concentrate on improving performance in the company to satisfy the PIP, or just get ready to maybe the handwriting's on the wall, just go immediately look for another job, consider resigning?
Yeah, I think it's definitely case by case. And I think by the time that you're at the point where you're writing the PIP, you know which the two directions it's going to go. I'm not going to say that there aren't surprises. I mean, even in my last company, I can think of someone where they said, oh, she's just got to go. And in the time that she was on the PIP, she impressed everyone so much with her development. She ended up staying, coming off the PIP and staying. So I'm not going to say that there aren't exceptions, but you basically know, right? You know, either the degree of how bad their performance is, the degree of, right, their heart. Do they actually want to be here, right? Is it just that it's that skill versus will kind of thing? So is it they want to be here, but they just need a little bit development, a little bit of push, a little more guidance, or do they just not give a shit? And I think that really is one of the biggest deciding factors. And 99% of the time, you know, going into the PIP, you know which way it's going to be.
Excellent. Okay, my last question before we wrap this up is, Gabriella, how do you identify if a coach is worthwhile hiring?
I love that. It's all about connection. It's all about relationship. I think there is probably no one on this planet that I'm more vulnerable with and honest with than my coach. And it needs to be someone that I have that connection with. So, I mean, there are so many incredible coaches out there, but I might talk to them and just not feel that vibe. So I think that's the number one most important. I think if you're looking at whether to hire a coach or not, I think a big question is how committed you are, right? Because a coach is totally there to support you, but it's you doing the work. And it's you at choice of looking at your life and deciding, I have the power for it to go differently, but it's going to be a little uncomfortable. So if you're committed to that, the results will be unbelievable, but you need to be committed to looking at your stuff.
Did I understand correctly that you have a coach?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. So for those of you listening out there, there is nothing more authentic and gives credibility is to somebody who walks the talk, as Gabriella is doing that, because she is saying, you know, she obviously is looking for clients and wants that, but it's not as if she's has a double standard or maybe some hypocrisy of the fact that, you know, world-class athletes need coaches. If a world-class athlete can need a coach, then what's the difference from us needing coaching and whatnot on that? So the fact that you actually you walk your talk, you have a coach, you know, that would be a question I would ask is, you know, if you're wanting to hire someone who says, who do you go to? I was talking to someone recently. They did a present. I see your hand raised there, Hirsch. I'll make sure I get to you. I was talking to someone that is in a coaching space. He was doing a presentation, and my question is, how do you know when you're in over your head? And he kind of looked at me, and he didn't have a good answer. He actually had a bad answer. His answer was his process, he could never be in over his head. And I'm going, you're freaking dangerous now. You are dangerous. You know, because he was actually working with people with PTSD.
Yeah.
And it's just like and I use that word very specifically, you're dangerous. If you don't know when you're over your head, you are dangerous. Yeah. So that would be a question I would be asking is that who do you get your coaching from? How do you know when you are effective? Who do you go to basically to have a sounding board? And this is more in the therapist space. People will go see a therapist. It won't be a good experience. And they say, I'm never going back to a therapist again, which is just shithouse rat crazy, because if a mechanic botches the transmission in my car, I'm not going to not get my transmission fixed. I'm just not going back to that mechanic. And this is part of the thing. And coaches, the exact same thing. There is no criteria to call yourself a coach.
Correct.
There really isn't. And so I think that if you're going to find a coach, you need to ask some of those very basic questions is, what is your philosophy on coaching? Who do you get coaching from? How do you know when you're over your head? How do you know if you can help me?
Hmm.
When I had a therapist, one of my therapists that I've had, because I've had many, I knew enough to interview him. And what he said that actually got me he said to me, I don't know if I can help you, but I'm willing to find out.
I love that.
That he gained so much credibility when he said, I don't know, but I'm willing to find out. Because so many there, oh yeah, of course I can help you. Well, no, there's a reason Freud called it transference for a reason, right? It's like on that. So Hirsch, what was your
So I'm just going to give you guys an example of a slightly different coach.
Okay.
I met a lady in my early 30s. She was also in her early 30s, and we had discussions about career advancement. I mean, she was the ultimate go-getter. She was going through a depression because she had just got out of a 9-year relationship. And she was very, very good at what she did. She was so good that her company allowed her to work remotely. Now, I used to live in Houston, and she also lived in Houston, but her client was located her company was located in Sweden. Her client was located in Toronto. So she would fly every Sunday night to Sweden or once a week to Toronto and back and forth, and then back to Houston. She goes, I would fly up on Sunday night. I'd put in 13 hours a day, 4 days a week, work nonstop, ultra super hard, and then fly home to Houston on, a Thursday night or Friday morning and spend 3 days with my family. And what allowed me to progress with my career is that I got a coach that was a coach and a therapist. And sometimes as a female manager, I don't know if what I'm doing is being a bitch or being a manager. Like there's that stereotype for women. And so just having someone to talk to, and feeling something out and bouncing ideas off a career coach, because it allows you to validate your thoughts and your opinions. So much of what we do holds us back. And she goes, having someone that's both a therapist and a coach was the most amazing thing, because it gets you emotionally grounded, lets you make decisions, lets you make wise decisions. And it allows you to, you're not paralyzed with fear or uncertainty. And it gives you a little bit of emotional, I don't know what type of language you use, because this was a conversation I had like almost 15 years ago. It gives you the emotional strength or fortitude to just keep on going, and moving forward with your career. Like you don't get stuck. And so she was like, I never made a single compromise with my career. She was one of those on pace to have a C-level executive position by her late 30s, which is, most people get to that level in their 40s or 50s. So she did well, but she goes, the one key to her success was having a coach that was both a therapist and natural coach.
And I've seen therapists out there who wear both hats. And my only question would be is, and there is that point in time, and I'm pretty sure Gabriella would agree with this, is that there is something in your past that's stopping you from moving forward. There is something in your past that's getting in the way of here and now that you have to discover. But where is the most of the focus? Is the focus on the past, or is the focus on moving you forward? And that's really what I would just have you really look at is that, if you're spending the majority of the time dwelling on the past or looking at the past, then you're in therapy versus how are we moving forward? Gabriella, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's not super common, but I do know a few coaches that have therapeutic backgrounds or social work backgrounds, and they do a fusion in their business. And I even have friends who work with those types of coaches and love it. I think what's most important, kind of what I was talking about earlier, is in my practice, how I own when I'm wearing my coach hat or my consultant hat. I think what's most important is making sure that you are clear what you're doing in the conversation, right? Are we currently doing past therapeutic healing work? Are we currently talking about, your future and what you're building? And yes, you will dance likely in one conversation between the two, but I think it's super important from an ethical standpoint to really own, what you're in. The last quick two things I would say on that is I do agree with your overall premise, though. I mentioned earlier, I'm someone that I work personally with both a therapist and a coach. They're different human beings, but I find that at least for me, having both angles is really the most supportive. And the last thing that I would say is, while I absolutely am not a therapist and I don't spend time on the past space and I don't heal trauma, I do think that there's a misconception that coaches don't deal with feelings at all. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, yeah. I don't even think I can think of a single coaching call that I have been on that I haven't asked, what are you feeling? What is your heart saying? What do you feel in your body? What do you need? Sometimes I have clients when they first start working with me, they're like, oh, this is for my therapist. And I'm like, I can handle feelings, right? Like, feelings are what could potentially be holding us back. They're fears, it's sadness. So feelings are still an okay to be in the coaching realm. It's more that it's just not dealing with like the past kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's really about for me, it's really the focus of where the therapist is at and whatnot. And I would ask the question of, so sometimes I think therapists are kind of like trying to play both hats so they're not missing any work. And the question is, where do you see therapy come in and where do you see coaching comes in? What's the delineation between the two? I just realized we're after our 2 hours, so I'm going to actually, there is one announcement I want to make before I bring this to an end. And Chris, this is going to be somewhat new information for you, but my Friday segments, widen your gaze. I was going to say there's going to be less of a focus on me doing those in the future because of the time it takes to find guest speakers and whatnot. So when they get posted you'll know when they get posted on Meetup if I'm going to have a guest speaker. But I'm just finding that I've had some experiences with other guest speakers who have not made it easy, and I've been left scrambling on a couple occasions. And just with the work I'm picking up with these other contracts, I just have to be more discerning with my time. So if you don't see anything on Widen Your Gaze on Fridays, that's because I don't have a guest speaker. And Gabriella, thank you so much for being here today. I can't believe how fast the 2 hours just flew by.
This was so awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm going to have everyone else sign off, and any last words you want to say, that would be great, but I will have you out. Gabriella, I was just going to do a quick debrief on this, and as I say, you don't have to leave your house, but you can't stay in this room. So
thank you very much, Gabriella.
See you all Friday.
You guys have a nice day.
Come back Friday. That's right. Okay. Now I'm going to.
Luke, is Friday's session going to be recorded and posted on your YouTube channel?
I certainly will. Yep.
Okay, because I think I have a conflict, but I put my comment in the chat here. So thanks very much.
Okay.
And hope to see you Friday.